Assalamu alaikum and hello. I'm Lona and I am one of those fully veiled Muslim women that often gets asked what my outfit is called, or I just get people outright calling it a burqa, which it isn't. Now, what is this outfit called is actually a really big question, because that's like asking somebody who wears Western clothing what their outfit is called and expecting to get one word that you could use to describe it every single day, which is probably not going to happen. She could be wearing a dress, a jumper, a shirt and jeans, any number of things, and all of those things would fall under the category of Western clothing. But there's probably not one word she could give you to describe her look every single day. The same thing applies to the clothes that us veiled women wear. There are so many different styles of veiling that there's probably not one word I can give you to describe all of our outfits all of the time. But I do want to make one thing abundantly clear. I am not wearing a burqa. This is not a burqa, and I have never in my life worn a burqa. And as a fully veiled woman, or a Niqabi as we call ourselves, I would really appreciate it if you would stop calling it that. So as a disclaimer, I just want to mention I have never lived in the Middle East or any Muslim majority country, so I'm not pretending to speak for what women in other regions of the world might call these outfits or how they feel about them. I'm just telling you how Niqabis here in the West feel about these outfits, why it's different than a burqa to us, and why that difference is important, and you should also distinguish between those two things. So please just keep in mind that this whole video is coming from a Western Niqabi's point of view, specifically a North American Niqabi. Now, as I'm sure you know, many countries here in the West have actually enacted bans on covering your face in public, mostly countries in Europe. And these laws are pretty much specifically aimed at us Niqabis, as evidenced by the fact that they don't apply to the mask mandates that are going around right now. These laws are usually nicknamed Burqa-Bans, so I don't blame you if that's what you thought this outfit was called, and if that's what you've been calling it for pretty much your entire life, because burqa and hijab seem to be the only two words that the Western media knows for any type of Islamic clothing. In fact, it's very difficult to find any news clip that uses the word burqa and actually gives you a visual image of a burqa. They're pretty much non-existent. So to all the Western media outlets out there, I just have one thing to say.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Now, let's start with a comparison of the physical garments themselves. This is a niqab. It's a separate face veil that comes in a variety of colors, styles, and layers. It can be long or short. It can be a half-face niqab like these ones, which only cover from the nose down, which means you could show your eyebrows, or you could pull your hijab down further to cover your eyebrows if you want. The point is the niqab only covers from your nose down. You can either tie it in the back with regular fabric ties, or it can have an elastic backing. The other option is that it could be a full-face niqab like I'm wearing in this picture on the left here, which you tie around your forehead like so, and then it has an opening for your eyes. Full-face niqabs have many different styles of eye openings. Some of the most common ones are here. This is the standard slit opening in the middle. To the left, this is a nose string. To the right, we have a widow's peak style, which is really comfortable on your eyes. Full-face niqabs can come in a single layer, or they can be 2 or 3 layers. If it's more than 1 layer, these extra layers can be pulled down to cover the eyes, as you can see with this 3-layer niqab here to the right, which in this picture has 2 layers down in the front and 1 that's down in the back. But wearing a layered niqab and covering your eyes with one of the layers does not make this garment a burqa. The color is not important. Although black is the most common color, more on why that is later, niqabs do come in every color of the rainbow, and most niqabis here in the West do wear a variety of colors. I know very few women, actually I'm not sure that I know any personally, that wear all black all the time. And I just realized that I've been using this word the entire video, but I still haven't actually explained it to you. I should let you know that a woman that covers her entire body, face included, save for her eyes, hands, and sometimes feet, is called a Niqabi. And the easiest and arguably most common way of being a Niqabi is to wear an actual separate niqab over whatever outfit you're already wearing underneath, as long as it's niqab compliant already, like covering everything in loose fabric. But while that is the easiest way of being a Niqabi, there are other ways of achieving being a Niqabi without wearing an actual niqab. You could, for example, just wear a regular hijab and pull the bottom up to cover your face and pin it on the sides, and I see some women do that. And you could also be wearing a jilbab that has an underneath chin part that you pull up to cover your face as well. In both of those instances, as long as you're covering everything but your eyes, hands, and feet, you are still a niqabi, even though you're not wearing an actual separate niqab. Speaking of jilbabs, I didn't explain that either, so let me show you what that is in case you've never seen one. This is a jilbab. On the left, we have a one-piece jilbab, and on the right is a two-piece jilbab, which has a separate skirt underneath. Either one can be worn with the face showing or with any kind of niqab over it. This woman in the middle is wearing a two-piece jilbab with a one-layer full-face niqab over it. These other two pictures are of me wearing a half-face niqab with my two-piece jilbabs, which I often do. I never wear full-face niqabs with a jilbab because it's just not comfortable to me, but to each their own. You can also pull up the bottom part of the jilbab to cover your face in order to achieve being a niqabi, and then you wouldn't be wearing an actual separate niqab, but you would still achieve niqabi level coverage, and thus you would still be a niqabi. Not all women who wear jilbabs are niqabis, and not all niqabis wear jilbabs. You can wear the niqab with other cultural garments as well, like shalwar kameez or even saris. The women in these pictures have just taken their headscarves and wrapped them to cover their faces, and in my opinion, this also makes them niqabis even though they aren't wearing separate niqabs. In fact, while studying burqa and niqab bans, I came across the case of Zunira Ishaq. She's the Canadian niqabi who challenged the prohibition of wearing the niqab during the Canadian citizenship ceremonies back in 2015, and she won her case. And after seeing many pictures of her, I realized that she uses that last method that I just talked about and appears to just be wearing her hijab around her face, and she's not wearing an actual separate niqab in any picture that I can find of her. Regardless, since she's covering her whole body, face included, she is still a niqabi, and I'm really proud of her. Not just for standing up to this dumb ban and winning, but also for having a sense of personal style. You don't have to give up your culture or your personal style when you become a niqabi, and this woman is just more evidence of that, and I love seeing niqabis express themselves. And as a last little note before we switch to looking at the burqa, I want to mention you could actually wear all Western clothing and still be a niqabi. For example, you could be wearing a long skirt with a long sleeve shirt that's very loose, or even a duster top over it. I sometimes see that style, and then have a scarf around your head that also covers your face. And as long as you're covering everything but your eyes, hands, and feet, and the clothing is very loose to, cover the shape of your body, you are still a niqabi. There isn't any one particular style of clothing or any ethnic or religious style that makes you more of a niqabi than somebody else. The idea is that you're covering everything loosely, and it's not really important how you achieve doing that. Now, let's take a look at some burqas. Now, these are actual burqas. As you can see, they have this mesh screen in front of the face that's part of the whole outfit and can't be removed separately like a niqab can. The whole outfit comes down from this cap on top, and while I've seen a few scant pictures of different color burqas, in practice it looks like they mostly come in this light kind of baby bluish color. Here's a picture of some other colors, and since they still have this very obvious screen on the front and this cap on top, these are definitely still burqas, but I'd say it's much more common to just see them in blue. So as I'm sure you've noticed, that burqa section was a whole lot shorter than the niqab one. And that's because the burqa is a really specific garment. The niqab, while it is also an identifiable garment, is also a concept that you can achieve without an actual niqab itself. So it's a really diverse garment, and it's a concept and a way of dressing, which makes it much more diverse and a little bit harder to pinpoint than an actual burqa. Next, for those of you who have never veiled, which is, I'm assuming, most of you, if not all, let me break down how those differences in the physical garments translate to the functional aspects of the garments and why that's really important. Because the niqab is a separate garment that's worn with other full coverage outfits, you can remove it without uncovering the rest of your body. You could take it off and just show your face. Also, you don't even have to remove it to have access to your face underneath. I can touch my face right now and I don't have to remove the niqab. This means you can eat with it on, work with it on, drive with it on, ride a motorcycle with it on. Heck, you can do anything you would normally do without it. Now, that eating part, of course, only applies if you're wearing an actual niqab like this one or a full face niqab, but it wouldn't apply if you had tied your hijab around your face or used the bottom of your jilbab. In that case, you would have to uncover your face in order to eat, but If you're not somebody who eats or drinks outside of the house a lot, then it might not make a difference to you. You can certainly still drive and ride a motorcycle and work and do everything else in a niqab if it's another style other than an actual niqab. Another thing that the niqab allows you to do is it allows you to pull it down or lift it up in cases where you need to identify yourself without exposing the rest of your body. This is really important, and niqabis like myself and every other niqabi here in the West readily does this whenever we need to. This myth being propagated by these anti-niqab Islamophobes that there are hordes of black-clad women flowing into the country and refusing to identify themselves en masse is just ridiculous. That doesn't happen. Well, okay, I take that back. It looks like it did happen once. I came across the story of this Florida woman who did refuse to remove it for her driver's license photo and tried to sue the state over it, but upon further research I realized this woman was not Middle Eastern, she was white American, and guess what? She had a history of causing scenes and was even once arrested for aggravated assault, which resulted in her not only having to take her driver's license picture without her niqab on like everybody else does, but she also had to have some mugshots taken because of her arrests. So it sounds to me like this lady was a Karen, okay? Except for it turns out her name was Sandra, but as far as I'm concerned, her name was Karen, all right? And Karens will be Karens, and they shouldn't reflect poorly on the entire niqabi population, okay? Either way, the narrative of niqabis being these foreign women who are refusing to give up the culture of their home countries and refusing to integrate still doesn't apply, even in this one extreme case that I could find of someone refusing to identify themselves. Most of us niqabis here in the West are reverts to Islam who choose to dress like this because we want to, and we still work and study and live our lives and do everything that we did before we wear the niqab afterwards. None of us, with the exception of Karen over here, refuse to identify ourselves when necessary. Now, the burqa, on the other hand, is an all-encompassing outfit that you usually throw over your house clothes when you leave, but this is actually really impractical for a variety of reasons. The first being, you wouldn't be able to eat in it very easily because you'd have to lift up the entire thing from the bottom in order to get food in your mouth, probably get food all over yourself. So that's super important to me because, food. Secondly, if you wanted to lift it for identification purposes, you would have to expose your entire chest area if it wasn't covered with a hijab or something else underneath. So that makes self-identification kind of problematic in this outfit. Also, since the mesh is part of the outfit and you can't remove it without taking the whole thing off, it would be really unsafe to drive in a burqa. And it would be pretty impossible, I'm betting, to ride a motorcycle in a burqa. I mean, I can't imagine anybody being able to get a helmet over that cap when I readily wear my helmet and all the rest of my gear over full niqab all the time, and I never have a problem. As someone who's veiled themselves in public for well over a decade, I've thought long and hard about why I would ever choose to wear a burqa. And after thinking about it, I came to the conclusion that the only reason that I would ever find a burqa useful is maybe to throw it on so I can go outside and get the mail and come back. Or maybe if I had one, I guess I would leave it next to the door and just have something to throw over my pajamas if somebody came to the door and I wanted to open it really quickly. But other than that, I can't think of any reason why I would actually want to wear a burqa. It's just very impractical. Now, lastly, let's go over a brief but important history of each garment to give us some more context here. According to Wikipedia, the burqa originated in the Afghanistan area of Central Asia and was around before the Taliban, and might have even been around before Islam even came to the area. But when the Taliban came to power in the late 90s, they imposed it by force on all Afghan women. This is how the burqa became a metaphor for the oppression of women in Afghanistan. Niqab, on the other hand, originated in the Arabian Peninsula, which is why black is the most common color, because culturally, men wear white and women wear black in places like Saudi Arabia. To this day, I would say that the black niqab is probably the easiest to find because it usually comes in the best quality fabrics and it doesn't get dirty as often, and black matches with everything. So it is the most common color for the face veil itself, but that doesn't mean that niqabis here in the West wear all black all the time. We usually don't. I know that the media is constantly shoving images like this down your throat, They show groups of women all dressed in identical black outfits and try to convince you that this is what Western Niqabis look like. But Western Niqabis look more like this. We are much, much more colorful and diverse than the media shows. So the niqab has been worn religiously and culturally in the Middle East for aeons, and it quickly did spread to other areas because it's so versatile, and it's never really been forced on women at gunpoint by a small group of radicals like the burqa was. It's much, much more widespread than the burqa because it is so versatile and practical, and if you name any country in the world, I can guarantee you I could find a woman there who wears the niqab. And while most women who wear the niqab are Muslim, you can't attach it to any one specific school of thought. And there are also some ultra-conservative Jewish women that wear the niqab as well. And I do know of a few people here in the US who also wear it and don't belong to any Abrahamic faith, which is not common at all, I will admit that, but it can happen. The niqab is an outfit for people who just don't want to show their bodies off in public. And there are any number of reasons why someone might want to do that other than religion. COVID has made this much more acceptable, but unfortunately, because of these poorly named burqa bans, even in countries where mask mandates are enforced, essentially turning every hijabi into a niqabi overnight, women can still be fined for covering their face in public with a niqab while simultaneously be fined for not wearing a mask. Oh, the irony. So in conclusion, the burqa is pretty much an exact uniform, whereas the niqab is a versatile dress code that can be worn in a variety of different ways. The niqab has been worn in the West for decades, if not longer, by women who have always chosen to wear it. We've always been a minority here, but we are a rapidly growing minority. More and more women choose to veil themselves every single day, and veiling doesn't stop us from doing anything else that we would normally be able to do without the niqab. Everyone that I know who wears the niqab, including myself, have jobs, or we go to school, or both, and we do everything else that we did before we veiled afterwards. The burqa, on the other hand, is a very specific garment that seems very non-functional and probably would get in the way of your daily life if you wanted to wear it here in the West. I can't speak as to how comfortable it is because I've never worn one, and its history here in the West is pretty much non-existent because as far as I've been able to find, I can't find a single woman in the West who has actually worn a burqa. It's pretty much worn exclusively in the Afghanistan region, and it really hasn't traveled outside of that region. In fact, I could only find 2 instances of women wearing an actual burqa here in the West, and in both cases, they were non-Muslim politicians who wore one assumingly in mockery or while trying to make a statement on the floor of Congress. Back in 2017, an Australian senator named Pauline Hanson wore one to Parliament, and way back in 2001, a New York City congresswoman named Carolyn Maloney wore one while addressing Congress. So the next time you're at the store and you come across a fully veiled woman and you're wondering whether or not you should compliment her on her pretty burqa, here's an easy 3-step test that can help you determine whether or not she's wearing a burqa. Number 1. Is there a mesh screen over the face that is part of a one-piece encompassing outfit? Number 2. Is it coming down from a cap at the top? Number 3. Are you in Afghanistan, or are you on the floor of Congress or Parliament surrounded by a bunch of self-righteous, out-of-touch politicians that don't know anything about the lived experience of Muslim women but still think that they speak for us? If the answer to any of those questions is no, you are probably not looking at a burqa. So I hope that cleared things up for you. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to send me a message or leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day. Assalamu alaikum.